The emergency broadcast cut through the silence of deep space like a scream in the night. On the peaceful world of Serenity Prime, Ambassador Veltar stood in what remained of the Planetary Communication Center, her crystalline hands shaking as she activated the galaxy-wide distress beacon. "Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need help desperately." Her voice echoed through the cosmos. Outside the reinforced walls, the sky burned orange with the glow of 1,000 fires. "The Harvester Legion has found us. They've already consumed our 3 outer colonies completely. Nothing remains but empty rock and metal scraps." Veltar paused, listening to the horrible grinding sounds growing closer. Through the cracked windows, she could see them moving across the landscape like a living carpet of death. Each harvester unit stood as tall as a building, their biomechanical bodies gleaming with stolen metals from a dozen dead worlds. They moved with terrifying purpose, their massive jaws crushing everything in their path, converting organic matter into fuel for their endless expansion. "We are the Meridian Alliance," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "For 3,000 years we have lived in peace. Our weapons are designed for defense only. Our ships carry no arms. We have never known war because we believe civilization had moved beyond such primitive concepts." The irony wasn't lost on her. Their advanced technology, their sophisticated society, their moral superiority over the violent species of the galaxy, none of it mattered now. The Harvesters didn't care about philosophy or ethics. They simply consumed everything living and moved on to the next world. "Our planetary shields held for 6 days," Veltar reported, watching through the tactical displays as the last defensive barriers flickered and died. "But these creatures, they don't just attack the shields. They eat them. They consumed the very energy itself and grew stronger." Across the galaxy, various civilized species received the transmission. In the floating cities of Altera, the Council of Wisps observed the message with detached sympathy. Their ethereal forms pulsed with soft colors of regret, but they had no military to offer. Violence was beneath them. On the crystalline world of harmony, the resonant collective harmonized their response in perfect unity. They would offer prayers and good intentions, but their society had eliminated all aggressive tendencies millennia ago. They couldn't even conceive of fighting such monsters. The insectoid Velcari clicked their mandibles in what passed for concern among their kind. Their hive mind calculated the threat level and quickly determined that intervention would risk their own carefully ordered society. The mathematics of survival were clear. Better to lose one alliance than risk the stability of their worlds. Even the mighty Confederation fleet, with their sleek silver ships and advanced weaponry, classified the Harvesters as a Class 9 extinction event. Their protocols were clear. Establish quarantine zones and wait for the threat to burn itself out. No civilized military force engaged Class 9 events directly. It was considered suicide. "We estimate less than 40 hours before our homeworld suffers complete consumption," Veltar continued, her report growing more desperate. "Our evacuation ships can save perhaps 10% of our population, but the Harvesters follow faster than we can flee. They seem to track life itself." She looked out at her dying world one more time. The beautiful crystal spires that had taken centuries to grow were being devoured in minutes. The singing forests that had produced the most beautiful music in the galaxy were now silent, their harmony replaced by the mechanical grinding of alien digestive systems. "If there is any species capable of fighting these monsters, we beg you to consider our plea. We offer everything we have, our technology, our resources, our eternal gratitude. We only ask for the chance to survive as a people." The message bounced through subspace relay stations, reaching even the most remote corners of the galaxy. Most recipients filed it away as another tragic extinction event. The Harvesters had claimed 43 species in the past century. 44 wouldn't change the balance of galactic power. But in one particular corner of space, in a small yellow star system that most civilized species avoided, the message was received by beings that the galaxy had written off as too primitive and violent for membership in civilized society. They lived on a world so dangerous that it was classified as uninhabitable by galactic standards, a place where the weather could kill, where predators lurked in every shadow, where even the plants were often poisonous. The signal reached Earth, and for the first time in this crisis, something began to change. The monsters were listening. and they were beginning to move. The alarm bells rang through Luna Base at exactly 0347 hours, jolting General Blake from his restless sleep. He'd been having the same nightmare for weeks. Cities burning while politicians debated in comfortable chambers. Now, as he rushed to the command center still pulling on his uniform, he realized the nightmare might be becoming reality. "Talk to me, Rodriguez," Blake said as he entered the bustling communication center. The base was alive with activity despite the early hour. Technicians hunched over glowing screens while translation programs worked overtime decoding the alien distress signal. "Sir, we confirm the transmission authenticity," Lieutenant Rodriguez replied, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "The Meridian Alliance is facing complete extinction. Based on their data, we're looking at a technological civilization of roughly 12 billion individuals being consumed by something they call the Harvester Legion." Blake studied the tactical readouts projected in the air before him. The alien technology was impressive. Energy shields, faster-than-light communication, cities that floated in their atmospheres. Yet none of it was helping them survive. "What's the Confederation's response?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Standard Protocol 7, sir. Quarantine and observe. They've classified it as unsurvivable and are establishing safe perimeter zones. No intervention plan." Blake wasn't surprised. In the 26 years since first contact, humanity had learned that the galactic community preferred discussion to action. They'd built a civilization based on avoiding conflict, which worked wonderfully until something like the Harvesters came along. Dr. Chin arrived next, still carrying her coffee and looking like she'd run from the xenobiology lab. "General, I've analyzed what data we have on these Harvester entities. They're unlike anything in our databases, part machine, part biological organism. They consume organic matter and convert it into additional units. It's exponential growth at its most terrifying. Weaknesses?" Blake asked. "Unknown. The Meridians tried everything. Energy weapons, particle beams, even their planet-cracking mining tools. Nothing worked. These things actually seem to absorb energy attacks and grow stronger." Captain Williams entered the briefing room, carrying a steaming cup and looking grimmer than usual. As head of the Terran Space Command, he'd been running scenarios all night. "Sir, I've run the numbers. If we're doing this, we need to move fast. Our fastest ships can reach Meridian space in 72 hours, but that's pushing our drives beyond recommended limits." Blake looked around the room at faces he'd worked with for years. They'd all volunteered for humanity's space program, knowing they might never see Earth again. Now they were talking about flying into certain death to save people they'd never met. "What ships do we have available?" Blake asked. "Honestly, sir, it's not pretty. The Pioneer's Dream is our largest vessel, originally built to haul mining equipment to the asteroid belt. We've got 2 converted colony ships, 3 exploration vessels, and 6 modified cargo haulers. Nothing designed for combat. That was the reality of humanity's space presence. While other species had spent millennia perfecting their interstellar civilizations, humans had only been in space for 60 years. Their ships were built for exploration and resource gathering, not war. Weapons." Blake continued. Williams winced. "We managed to retrofit some vessels with kinetic projectile systems, basically rail guns firing dense metal slugs. A few ships carry mining charges that could work as explosives. Most of our weapons are repurposed industrial equipment." The room fell silent. They were talking about facing an extinction-level threat with mining tools and improvised weapons. Any sane military commander would refuse such a mission. "Personnel?" Blake asked. "That's where it gets interesting, sir," Rodriguez spoke up. "Word about the mission leaked to the civilian networks about an hour ago. We got volunteer applications flooding in from every human settlement in the system. Engineers, doctors, former military, even civilian pilots offering their services." Blake wasn't surprised. Humans had a peculiar reaction to impossible odds. Instead of running away, they seemed to run toward danger, especially when innocent lives were at stake. It was a trait that had helped them survive on Earth, but one that baffled other species. "Timeline," he asked. "If we're doing this, we launch in 18 hours, Williams replied. any longer, and we'll arrive to find empty planets. Blake looked at the tactical display one more time. 12 billion lives hanging in the balance, while the galaxy's most powerful civilizations watched safely from a distance. Every logical analysis said the mission was suicide. The smart play was to stay home and let someone else handle the problem. But Blake had grown up reading stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when the world needed them most. Today, the world was much bigger than anyone had imagined, but the principle remained the same. "Prep the fleet," he said quietly. "We launch in 16 hours. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace into hell itself. Captain Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching through the main view screen as Serenity Prime burned beneath them. What had once been a pristine world of crystal cities and floating gardens was now a nightmare of smoke and destruction. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Evans from her sensor station. "Sir, I'm reading massive organic signatures across the entire planet's surface. These things are everywhere." The Harvester Legion moved across the landscape like a living plague. Each unit stood 3 stories tall, their biomechanical bodies gleaming with stolen metal from consumed cities. They moved in perfect coordination, their massive jaws crushing everything in their path, while smaller drone units scuttled between them, collecting organic matter. "Communications, try to raise any surviving Meridian forces," Grant ordered. The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, jury-rigged human equipment straining to interface with alien technology. "Sir, I've got something," reported Communications Officer Peterson. "Weak signal from the planetary capital. It's Ambassador Veltar." The main screen flickered, showing a crystalline being huddled in what appeared to be a damaged bunker. Her elegant features were streaked with something that might have been tears, and her voice carried the weight of absolute despair. "Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves. If you are here to observe our final moments, we ask only that you remember us to the galaxy." Grant stepped forward. "Ambassador Veltar, this is Captain Grant of the Terran vessel Defiance. We received your distress call. We're here to help." The alien's expression shifted through confusion to something approaching disbelief. "Terran? But Earth is a quarantined death world. Your species is classified as too primitive for galactic intervention protocols." "Ma'am, with respect, we didn't come here to debate classifications," Grant replied. "We came here to fight. Can you provide tactical data on harvester positions and civilian evacuation sites? What happened next will be talked about in alien military academies for generations." The human fleet didn't establish safe perimeters or conduct long-range bombardment. Instead, they dove directly into the swarm, their converted cargo ships ramming through harvester formations while Marines in improvised armor leaped from vessel to vessel. Major Wells led the first ground assault, dropping from the Pioneer's Dream in a modified mining pod that crashed through the roof of a besieged Meridian shelter. Her soldiers emerged wearing what the aliens recognized as construction equipment hastily modified for combat. "Perimeter secure," Wells reported through her comm system as her team set up defensive positions. "Beginning civilian evacuation. These Meridians move slower than expected. We can work with this." The watching aliens couldn't believe what they were seeing. These humans didn't just fight the harvesters. They fought them at close range, using weapons that seemed designed for industrial work rather than combat. Plasma cutters sliced through harvester armor. Mining charges blew apart their coordination nodes, and improvised flamethrowers cleared entire sections of the creatures. But what truly amazed the Meridians was what happened between the fighting. When Private Jackson spotted a group of alien civilians trapped under rubble, he didn't hesitate to abandon his defensive position to dig them out. When Corporal Martinez ran out of ammunition, she shared her water rations with frightened refugees while waiting for resupply. "They fight like demons," Ambassador Veltar transmitted to her surviving government officials. "But they protect us like we were their own children." The human approach to warfare baffled everyone watching. They would charge directly into harvester formations with weapons that barely qualified as military equipment, then stop mid-battle to carry wounded civilians to safety. They shared their limited medical supplies and food rations with aliens they'd never met. Sergeant Kane demonstrated a human talent for improvisation when his squad found themselves cut off in the ruins of Meridian School. Using nothing but industrial adhesives and structural supports, they built a fortress that held off harvester attacks for 6 hours while protecting 200 alien children. "Sir, these creatures are adapting to our tactics," Kane reported to Major Wells during a brief lull in the fighting. "They're learning to counter our weapons." "Then we adapt faster," Wells replied, already planning their next move. "Peterson, what's the structural integrity on that collapsed overpass? Think we can bring it down on top of their main formation?" The harvesters had never encountered anything like human warfare. These creatures didn't follow any logical combat doctrine. They used construction tools as weapons, turned civilian infrastructure into tactical advantages, and displayed a complete disregard for their own safety when protecting others. More importantly, they seemed to actually enjoy the impossible odds. Where other species would retreat in the face of overwhelming enemy numbers, humans just smiled grimly and started looking for creative solutions. By the end of the first day, something unprecedented was happening. The Harvester Legion, which had never retreated from any world, was actually pulling back from several key positions. The turning point came on the 4th day, in the smoking ruins of what had once been Serenity Prime's most beautiful district. The Harvesters had cornered nearly 5,000 Meridian civilians in the central plaza, their escape route systematically cut off by the advancing swarm. Ambassador Veltar watched from her damaged bunker as the biomechanical monsters closed in on her people, preparing for what would likely be the final harvest. That's when the humans arrived. Colonel Morrison's Marines came from 3 directions at once, emerging from sewage tunnels, rappelling from damaged buildings, and charging straight through the main avenue. What the aliens witnessed next defied everything they understood about civilized warfare. The humans didn't try to outflank the enemy or establish superior firing positions. Instead, they ran directly at creatures 3 times their size, screaming battle cries that echoed off the ruined buildings. Sergeant Kane led his squad with nothing but plasma cutters and mining charges, tools that no military in the galaxy would consider proper weapons. "These things have hydraulic systems," Kane shouted over the chaos, dodging a massive claw swipe that would have cut him in half. Hit the joints where the fluid lines connect. What emerged wasn't warfare as the galaxy understood it, but something far more primitive and terrifying. These humans fought like they'd been designed for it, moving through the swarm with a fluid violence that spoke of millions of years spent at the top of a food chain that actively tried to kill them. Private Rodriguez demonstrated the human talent for creative destruction when she jury-rigged her mining equipment to spray superheated metal directly into harvester optical sensors. The creatures, blinded and confused, began attacking each other while Marines herded civilians toward the evacuation zones. "Transport 6, we've got packages moving your way," called Lieutenant Adams from her position coordinating the rescue. She was using construction barriers and demolished vehicles to create safe corridors while her squad held off attackers with weapons that had been designed to cut through asteroid rock. The Meridians watched in stunned silence as these primitive beings did something no civilized species had even attempted. They were fighting the Harvesters in hand-to-hand combat, using their own bodies as weapons when their tools failed. Corporal Thompson actually grabbed a Harvester drone with his bare hands and used it as a club against its larger counterparts. Above the atmosphere, the space battle was equally chaotic. Captain Fletcher was performing maneuvers with a defiance that violated every safety protocol and Confederation manual, threading her converted cargo ship through clusters of harvester vessels to deliver supplies to ground forces. "Fletcher, your structural integrity is at 60%, warned Chief Engineer Park over the comm system. Any more stress and the hull will crack." "Then we better make this count," Fletcher replied, diving toward the planet's surface with 3 harvester ships in pursuit. At the last possible moment, she released her cargo pods and pulled up, leaving the enemy vessels to crash into the atmosphere, while her supplies reached the embattled Marines below. What truly amazed the watching aliens was how the humans seemed to thrive under pressure that would break other species. When Sergeant Williams found his squad surrounded by harvesters with no ammunition left, he didn't surrender or call for evacuation. Instead, he started stripping parts from his equipment to build improvised explosives. "If we're going down, we're taking them with us," he muttered, working frantically while his teammates used mining tools to hold off the advancing swarm. The resulting explosion cleared an entire city block and opened an escape route for trapped civilians. Dr. Chen worked alongside Meridian medical personnel, teaching them human trauma surgery techniques that were considered barbaric by galactic standards but proved remarkably effective at keeping people alive under battlefield conditions. Your species cuts directly into damaged tissue, observed one Meridian healer with obvious distress. This seems so violent. Sometimes violence saves lives, Chen replied, successfully stabilizing a patient that would have died under conventional alien medical protocols. We learned a long time ago that gentle approaches don't work when someone's bleeding out. By the 5th day, something unprecedented in galactic history occurred. The Harvester Legion, which had never retreated from any engagement in recorded memory, began pulling back from key positions. Their coordination started breaking down as human tactics disrupted their collective intelligence networks. The creatures had evolved to consume passive prey that relied on technology for protection. They had never encountered a species that fought back with such creative brutality while simultaneously protecting the weak. Every time they adapted to human weapons, the humans found new ways to hurt them. Most importantly, they had never faced an enemy that actually seemed to enjoy impossible odds. Where other species would retreat when outnumbered, humans just smiled grimly and started looking for more creative ways to cause damage. The tide of battle was finally turning, and the galaxy was about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world. 6 months after the Battle of Serenity Prime, General Blake stood before the most powerful assembly in the galaxy. The Confederation Council chamber stretched out before him like a gleaming amphitheater, filled with representatives from 63 different species. Every eye, sensor array, and consciousness field was focused on a human in a simple military uniform who had somehow changed everything. The chamber buzzed with translations in dozens of languages as delegates whisper among themselves. Some stared at Blake with curiosity, others with barely concealed fear. Most had never seen a human in person before, and the reality was different from their expectations. He looked so ordinary, so unremarkable compared to crystalline Velcari or the flowing energy forms of the Etherians. Honored delegates, Blake began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. 6 months ago, you received a distress call from the Meridian Alliance. 12 billion lives hung in the balance, while most advanced civilizations in the galaxy watched from a safe distance. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Alterans' floating forms dimmed slightly, while the resonant collective's harmonious humming grew discordant. You called us monsters from a quarantined death world, Blake continued, his tone remaining steady and conversational. Maybe you were right. Earth taught us to be violent because everything on our planet tried to kill us. We learned to fight because the alternative was extinction. Behind him, massive holographic displays came to life, showing scenes from the reconstruction of Serenity Prime. Human engineers worked alongside Meridian technicians, rebuilding the crystal cities with hybrid technology that combined alien elegance with human durability. Medical stations where Dr. Chen's trauma surgery techniques were being taught to healers from a dozen different species. Training facilities where Colonel Morrison's Marines instructed peaceful civilizations in the art of defensive warfare. But here's what you didn't understand about monsters, Blake said, gesturing toward the images. We can choose who we fight for. The display shifted to show the newly established Terran Protection Corps training facilities spread across human space. Volunteers from Earth's colonies worked around the clock, converting civilian ships for rescue operations and modifying industrial equipment for defensive purposes. Ambassador Veltar approached the speaking platform, her crystalline form catching the chamber's soft lighting. The Meridian representative had requested permission to address the council alongside the human delegation. Honored colleagues, she began, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. I stood in the ruins of my homeworld and watched these primitive Deathworlders do something our advanced civilization could not. They didn't just save us, they showed us what we had forgotten. She paused, looking around the chamber at faces that had once offered her sympathy but no action. The humans fought the harvesters with mining equipment and construction tools because that's all they had. But when the battle was over, they used those same tools to rebuild our cities. Their medics, train for treating combat injuries, stay behind to teach us how to heal trauma we never knew existed. They're engineers, experts at surviving on a hostile world, showed us how to make our beautiful cities strong enough to withstand the next threat. The chamber remained silent as Veltar continued. These humans have something we lost long ago. They remember that civilization isn't just about avoiding conflict. Sometimes it's about standing up to the darkness, even when the odds are impossible. Blake stepped forward again. The Terran Protection Initiative isn't asking for territorial concessions or trade advantages. We're offering our services to any civilization facing extinction-level threats. All we want in return is the right to prove that even monsters can choose to protect rather than destroy. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Some delegates argued that lifting the Soul Containment Treaty would destabilize the careful balance of galactic politics. Others worried about the precedent of allowing a primitive species into civilized space. But the vote, when it finally came, wasn't even close. The treaty was lifted by a margin of 47-16, with several abstentions from species still uncertain about trusting the Deathworlders. Within a year, the change was dramatic. The Terran Protection Corps received formal requests for assistance from 17 different civilizations. Some faced natural disasters that their peaceful technologies couldn't handle. Others dealt with aggressive neighbors who had grown bold in the face of passive resistance. Each time, the humans responded with the same combination of creative violence and stubborn compassion that had saved Serenity Prime. They fought when fighting was necessary, but they also built schools, trained local defense forces, and shared the hard-won wisdom of a species that had learned to thrive in the face of constant danger. The galaxy discovered that having apex predators as allies changed the fundamental equation of interstellar politics. Bullies thought twice before attacking peaceful worlds when those worlds might have human friends. The Harvester Legion, reduced to scattered remnants, learned to avoid any system with even a small human presence. In her final report to the Confederation Archives, Ambassador Veltar wrote words that would be quoted for generations. They came from a world that tried to kill them every day, and somehow learned to love life because of it. Perhaps this is why, when we cried for help across the darkness of space, the monsters are the ones who answered our call.